comes to advanced troubleshooting and verifying the origin of the issues that you may run into, there are a couple of ways you can go about it. For example, I've already discussed how you can click on File, load factory settings, and load a factory default version of Blender, and from there enable HardOps and Boxcutter, and basically give it a test to find out if the issue is related to your configuration. However, depending on how long you've been working in your scene, reloading default settings and then trying to work from it can be a little bit unusual, especially when it comes to the way Blender handles things. So sometimes it's better to deal with things externally on a more intense level in order to troubleshoot and find the origin of the issues that you may face. For example, right now we are working inside of factory defaults. However, if I press Ctrl N and I make a new file, we see that we're still inside of our factory scene. So it does require that I close Blender and then reopen it again in order for me to get back to my original configuration that I had. Of course, if I don't save my preferences or start up scene, I'm not going to override it. But just like that, I'm able to reinitialize Blender and just quickly do a little bit of advanced troubleshooting to test to find out what's going on. But loading factory settings is probably level 1. Level 2 is actually pressing the Windows button in R and going to your app data folder and locating your Blender foundation and just renaming Blender. In fact, we're going to rename it and just put an underscore at the end. And what this means is that when Blender opens, it's going to open as if it's never ever seen any of this before. So now we have Blender opened as if it's never seen us before. It doesn't have any add-ons enabled or installed. So we are basically at square one. But because we renamed a folder, we still have a way back. So I'm just configuring Blender, same old, F4, preferences, we'll go to add-ons, install, and we're just going to test installing these versions of HardOps and Boxcutter that we have. So I'm just installing HardOps and Boxcutter, and we're now good to go. So I can just press Alt W, we can get in here and just start cutting away. But in the event that we wanted to go back to where we were, we still have those capabilities as well. So, you know, I will nuke Blender like you see me doing just to bring ourselves to a way to test things. And then whenever I'm done, for example, now I'm testing the mirror, we can just load our preferences back and go back to exactly where we were. So to show that in action, we are just going to close Blender, and I'm going to delete this Blender folder we just created, and we are going to put the original one back. So by testing this way, you're able to confirm that the issues that you're experiencing aren't related to the configuration that you have, to the tools that you have installed, or anything to do with the way that you've dealt with Blender. Sometimes it's good to just take it back to something a little bit more of a control space so you can find out exactly what it is that went wrong. But just like that, we were able to nuke our setup, install cleanly, test to see if the add-ons were working, and then from there jump back to our setup, where we are now able to work in the comfort of the scene that we have prepared already. You know, sometimes you don't want to lose your setup or your configuration, so when it comes to troubleshooting issues, it's good to back up your configuration so you can restore it later in the event that it turns out that your configuration wasn't the issue. If you're not trying to use settings from an older version of Blender, then your settings should be good to go, and thus that is a good reason why it's nice to sometimes back them up and then recall them later. So with that,